essentially act along the Soros program. Let's set up a haven for internet hackers, for various websites from around the world. We'll guarantee no censorship or anything like this. So therefore, you see how the guy operates. Here's another one. The Norm Coleman question, right? Norm Coleman was, of course, this senator from Minnesota, in many ways a nasty fellow. I certainly didn't like him, but there was a fight between Norm Coleman and Soros over who was going to become the president of the World Bank. And Soros had his own candidate, a guy called Ford Malloch Brown, Baron Brown, and Coleman was opposing him. So this seems to have contributed to the huge amount of money that was put into that Al Franken campaign. But in the middle of that, there was also an intervention by WikiLeaks against Norm Coleman. Right? They published his whole contributors list with the many details of the individual lives of these people. So
that's extremely suspicious.
About the World Bank. So that's the idea. You gain credibility with a lot of good information, and then you can put in the fake information that targets the people that you want to target for completely different reasons. But, of course, the big thing is Pakistan, right? If you look at the London Guardian, right, which is the left wing of the British intelligence agencies, you can see that their coverage focuses on two things. That the 90,000-odd documents, very low-level, secret-level, essentially routine inter-office correspondence in the government labeled secret, these say Pakistan is treacherous, Pakistan betrays the U.S., Pakistan is a bad ally, they stab us in the back, and that then is giving rise now to this huge anti-Pakistani campaign, the attacks on General Gould and others, the demonization of the ISI, and so forth. But then also Iran. The Guardian focused on Iran, that Iran is fomenting a whole array of insurgencies in their part of Afghanistan along their border, and they're going to keep doing that. So you're left with the idea. It's going to be a good idea to de-emphasize and downplay the Afghan war and look now at your real enemies in the area, who are these two big states, Iran and Pakistan. And it seems to me one of the obvious things is to play one against the other, and that's a pattern that you see. The U.S. strategy in the entire Middle East is to try to line up a group of states that would be Arab and Sunni, plus a couple of others, against Iran, which is Iranian, Persian, and also Shiite. And the big call for the attack on Iran that you can read about in my essay that I put on the internet, and you have it also on Infowars, is that you've got the Gulf states, Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates are they've been jazzed up by the U.S., obviously, to demand the attack on Iran because this threatens them. So they're raising this hue and cry. The example, of course, is the ambassador from the United Arab Emirates in Aspen, Colorado, about 2 or 3 weeks ago, who went into a public tirade. We demand an attack on Iran immediately. What is this? We're willing to take the cost. You Americans get busy. This was at the Aspen Ideas Festival. So all of this going on, and the WikiLeaks feeds right into this agitation just at the proper moment.
It's all very suspicious. Stay there, Webster.
You are listening to GCN. Visit GCNlive.com today.
This is Alex Jones with 5 good reasons you should consider buying a solar power generator. Number 1, new climate legislation could easily double or triple your electric bill. Number 2, our new energy czar wants to control how much power your electric company allows you to have. It's true. Total government control of electricity in the name of smart grid technology is coming. Number 3, in some areas of the country, the power grid is dangerously overloaded. And now new socialist legislation is only compounding the problem. Number 4, dangerous weather is always a threat to local grids. Every year, thousands of families lose their power from weather-related outages. Number 5, a solar power generator provides powerful backup insurance and peace of mind. Folks, I really believe in the solar power generators offered by Solutions from Science, one of my oldest sponsors. You can get more information at www.mysolarbackup.com. That's mysolarbackup.com. Remember, the government doesn't own the sun, so go to mysolarbackup.com or call 1-877-327-0365.
We Waging war on corruption. Alex Jones on the GCN Radio Network. Big Brother, mainstream media, government cover-ups. You want answers? Well, so does he. He's Alex Jones on the GCN Radio Network. And now, live from Austin, Texas, Alex Jones.
Webster Tarpley is our guest. We're going to open the phones up when he leaves us in 30 minutes. The toll-free number to join us, 800-259-9231. I want to get into the open discussion now and the open green lighting of an attack on Iran. Does Webster Tarpley agree with Ahmadinejad that the attacks in the next 3 months? That's coming up. Also, I want to ask Tarpley about top Clinton official and advisor to Obama, Robert Shapiro, saying, hey, we need a staged terror attack. I'm going to read that quote coming up. We're going to talk about the economy. We're going to get into other dirty tricks he sees the Obamanoids pulling as there's a major political realignment taking place. But Webster Tarpley is our guest. I was actually going to ask Tarpley about this, and I was talking to him during the break. He brought it up himself. The similarities between WikiLeaks and Daniel Ellsberg, and I know Fletcher Prouty said he wrote many of those documents that when he was the head of Black Ops at the Pentagon, that the Rand Corporation then later put out through Daniel Ellsberg. And Fletcher Prouty said that they'd been altered and were fake, and that it was a disinfo honeypot. And then Tarpley was just now agreeing with that during the break and saying there's similarities with this and WikiLeaks. Webster, let's finish up with WikiLeaks and get into Iran. Go ahead.
The big thing we hear from Assange is he says that he is the modern equivalent of Daniel Ellsberg and the Pentagon Papers of June 1971. This was an internal history of the Vietnam War, prepared really during the Johnson years, but then leaked in a spectacular way with the help of the same New York Times and the Washington Post and the Boston Globe in June and July of 1971, which drove Nixon crazy. This was done by Daniel Ellsberg, who for many leftists in particular, still a hero. I've never been able to understand this. Daniel Ellsberg was a nuclear weapons planner from the Rand Corporation. He had been part of planning the Vietnam War. He was a member of Henry Kissinger's staff in the White House, and then he had a Damascus Road conversion. He became anti-war, conscience-stricken, and released all of this stuff. And as you say, there was nothing new in these papers. If you had been reading Le Monde de France or any of the big Italian papers, you knew all this. I mean, I knew most of it myself just by having read these things. There was nothing really that new in it. But what it did do was constitute a leak which drove Nixon crazy. Nixon was, of course, a paranoid personality, and Nixon had been extremely freaked out that same year, 1971. There had been a huge crisis between India and Pakistan. This is what led to the creation of Bangladesh that year with wars, genocide.
The Russians, it's now been declassified, came to the U.S. with a joint strike on China, and Nixon had said no as well.
No, because Nixon was allying with China at that time. That was the whole point.
Why did the elite sabotage Nixon? Because that's clear and admitted now that Haig and Kissinger and others did that. Why did the establishment turn on Nixon?
I think there were two things. One is that they sincerely wanted at that point to liquidate the Vietnam War and focus on other things that were coming up. But there's also the question of weakening the presidency. With Nixon, it sounds bombastic and theatrical in retrospect, but there were these aspects of an imperial presidency, right? Nixon wanted to be an authoritarian. He wanted to have a strong presidency, and this was exactly what the oligarchy didn't want. Think of it. The Washington Post is really the house organ of the Federal Reserve System. The Washington Post was founded by Eugene Meyer, who was a refugee from the Federal Reserve. He hated Roosevelt. He disagreed with Roosevelt's economic policies, and he set the Washington Post up as the paper that he bought in the Capitol here to be an anti-Roosevelt and then later anti-presidential, anti-government in that sense organ. So the Washington Post always stands for a weak presidency and ultimately for a strong Federal Reserve. So I think the idea was permanently weaken the president with the Watergate coup, and they succeeded because they look at the people after that, Ford, Carter, really very, very weak presidents.
All right, stay there. Let's get into Iran and the war clouds, storm clouds forming on that front. the economy, and false flag terror. Straight ahead with Webster Tarpley. I'm Alex Jones.
Thousands of Americans are facing evacuation. If you or any of your loved ones might need to evacuate, you must do it yourselves. Please don't procrastinate until they do it for you. Remember the terrible conditions of those that didn't get out for Katrina. Go right now to efoodsdirect.com/Alex or call 800-409-5633 for information on the new Evacuation Pack. It contains 2 weeks of delicious, easy-to-fix food, along with the equipment to prepare it. It's packed in a rugged, heavy-duty tote for transport. Evacuations are looming with the storms and the Gulf oil catastrophe. No matter where you live, wildfires, earthquakes, floods, and storms must be escaped. Don't be like a deer frozen in the headlights of oncoming disaster. At least prepare yourself with this 2-week evacuation pack from efoodsdirect.com. Call 800